Welcome back to Channel Water. Today we're going to talk about the individual, our personality. How is it that each one of us is so different when we all come from one body of consciousness? It is important to understand that duality that we live in, being a unique individual with our own point of view, while also understanding that you are not an individual and you are part of a bigger body that is looking through your point of view. Once we understand and fully comprehend that duality, our life can change and we can really accept and understand ourselves and the environment around us much better. So first, let's talk about that ocean of consciousness we come from. It is one body of consciousness, and consciousness is something that is constantly experiencing the present time. It is always in the present and always experiencing. That consciousness has no limits, like we have in the physical world. It has no time, has no past, no future. It is only experiencing what is in front of it at that moment. And that is what's so unique about it, is that ability to always experience, but it doesn't have a memory for itself, as itself. It is only has that moment, what happens in that present moment. And that's where we are so different, is that we are machines that have memories. We record our events. So think about consciousness as being the person behind a camera, for example. You always see what's happening at this moment. Your eyes are always watching the present moment. Your eyes cannot go back or forward in time. But if you have a camera in front of you and now you can record, that camera stores memories. So now you plus the camera, you have the present conscious being that is always seeing the present moment, and now you have this camera and the ability to also see things from the past that you have recorded. Imagine that ocean of consciousness, this one body that is fully connected and experiences itself as one, and now you take drops of water from that ocean and you put those drops into vessels, vehicles, people. And now each person, each vehicle has a technology to it. We have our senses and we can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and we have even more senses that we're not even fully aware of. So now we take that drop of consciousness that is always present, always in the moment, operating this vehicle, this vessel, and all of the senses are recorded in this vehicle. So we are storing constantly everything, all the data of what is happening around us. The pure consciousness that is in us, for example, if we call it the water that's in the body, it doesn't experience the material world directly. Everything is experienced through a technology and through our senses. So my eyes see, my nose smell, my ears hear, but all of that data goes somewhere in the body. And then we have our control center, like the brain. And we always say that the eyes don't see, it's the brain that does. That's where all that data interprets into something that is what I think is what I see. So there is space between, or I want to say, there is a gap between the consciousness that is experiencing and the world it experiences. And that gap is the technology that we're using, the vehicle we're operating. So just like an astronaut in space can never get outside of his suit and will always experience life and matter through that suit. I think that explains a lot when we start to think about life as a simulation. when we start to think about what part of life is real and what part is an illusion, what part is just data that we are processing, and what part is actually what it is. Are the colors I see the color that are there? The taste I taste, will somebody else has the same experience? So there's a lot of space for interpretation between the experience and consciousness itself. And now we get into the vessels. Each one of us has a different vehicle, a different body altogether. And from plants, animal, people, the amount of sensors and the different ways of experiencing the world is basically infinite. Different animals will see different spectrums of color, will hear different spectrums of sound, will experience completely a different world. Some will experience the electricity, some will experience the thermal signatures, some will experience sound in a way and not see. So we live in a world that we cannot really know fully, and we only see certain spectrums out of it through our technologies and through our sensors. The reason I start with this subject of our bodies and technologies is to first understand physically that we will never experience the same reality, that we will never have the same point of view of the world, both between different species and also between different people. Each person has a completely different experience, data, and memory stored than the next. And physically, we will never have the same. Somebody can put their head right next to me and we'll both look at the same thing. We will never actually have the same visual register of what we're seeing because their eyes are always going to be next to my head. We cannot merge together physically. So we will never have the same point of view. Physically, our eyes will never see the same, hear the same, taste the same. And then we also have different sensors. Different people are sensitive to different things, see different colors, hear different sounds. We are so different when it comes to our bodies, our vessels, and the vehicles we operate. So in our bodies, there's consciousness that is experiencing the present. Our bodies record all that data, and that is stored in our body. So now we have a sense of past. We have a sense of a timeline, and we have those memories, which are experiences that we can relive, re-experience, we can dwell on them, we can go back to them. We have a past which doesn't really exist outside of our memory, and also doesn't exist outside of our individual memories. I might remember something that somebody else won't. So my past is completely different than theirs. But outside of our bodies, it doesn't exist at all. Whatever happened in the past happened. Whatever matter has moved, it has moved. That placement of before those events doesn't exist anymore. It's not a place you can go back to. We also use the past in order to project onto the future. So that's another part of the timeline that doesn't exist. But we try to take our experiences from the past to prepare ourselves for what's to come in the future, so we can do the right thing, or just to be ready, to have the right tools, to have the right attitude, to know what is to be expected. We definitely have some fear or anxiety of the unknown, so we try to use as much as we can events of the past to project onto the future. So we are stuck in between two timelines that don't exist, while we are constantly in the present moment. And I made a whole video about that, does time exist, where you can really dive in further about past, future, and how those timelines don't really exist, and how much it affects us badly when we get stuck either in the past or the future, which ends up stealing away from you the present moment, where you really need to be most of the time. So, since we have different vehicles, different point of views, different sensors, different records of the past, different experiences altogether, we start to see where our character comes from. As we grow up, we start from zero, a blank slate. And as we build up our experiences and memories, and differently from the next person next to us, we build completely different records and have completely different experiences at the moment, but also memories of those moments. We start to build a different idea of what life is and the different experiences of what happened and what will happen in the future, right? So we have a completely different understanding of the past and future now based on those experiences. So going back to the bigger ocean, imagine this one being that is sending out infinite amount of sensors to experience, map, build, and understand this material world. And those infinite amount of sensors are each one of us. So in one way, you can look at it as one experience. There is one body having one experience through infinite amount of sensors. We, because we are a drop of water from that ocean that is now in this body, we are isolated and separated, like an astronaut in space. We are separated from the rest of the experience of the bigger body, because our job and the way we work is that we take data in and record it, again through all your senses. So you are the input, you are the sensor. That's where everything comes in. What you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you touch, and what you did. For us, it's easy to forget that we are part of something bigger, that there is a bigger body, that we are right now in an isolated state of separation, physically. And that's the reason that these reminders are good for people that go too far in that isolation and in the feeling and sense of separation. Sometimes it starts having a negative effect on the being because we are something bigger and we are fully connected in our natural state. So the isolation is very hard. That separation is hard. And we try to recreate relationships and rebuild connections, which helps us through that journey. But when you see that you are at the end of that sensor that serves a much bigger body, and you are basically experiencing in a very site-specific, in a very local place, and that is the beginning of your personality and character. The fact that you are in a different place than I am, and you are in a different vehicle than I am, your experiences, what you have recorded, the way you're going to use that to project onto the future, all of that creates that personality. All of that starts that separation between us, because when we start, we are the same, but the further we go, the more different we become. And you can see that the more experiences you have, the more complex your character gets, and the more it's hard to understand somebody else, because their experiences are so different, their memories are so different. It's hard to even relate, which is amazing to think about that we can get to a point where one person cannot understand the other whatsoever. So the experiences, the range of them is so big and vast, and their effect on our character is also so big that once we start to see that the only thing that separates us is our past experiences, which for the most part we don't have control over. It's things that happen to us as we grow up in our environment, and for the most part we have zero control over that. So it's strange when we start to lose touch, separate ourselves, not see other people as me in a different body, having a different experience, and then starts judgment, blame. That is where we lose our path, and that is where the issues start. So for me, making this video about personality is really trying to bridge over that and help people see that your character and personality is just a site-specific event to where you were born, and you would be any other person in any other place. I want to expand about the fractal side of consciousness, and just so it might be helpful in understanding, again, our personality and our individual illusion at certain point. One of the biggest mysteries about the human body is how is it that it's functional? Every cell, every vein, our bodies are completely functional all the time, and also the amount of humans that are functional. One would expect that there will be many more errors or dead parts in your body or things that will not function and not work. But the reason it does, it's because every cell in your body is conscious. There is local awareness everywhere. And I'll give you an example. Let's say we had a tornado coming through our city and roads are covered, there's destruction, there's issues. Each individual is going to clear the way in their driveway to the street, and then will clear the street, and that individual, now they're in their home, will clear the way to their room, to their bedroom, to the kitchen. There's this local awareness that keeps things functional and operational. We know that the model of a brain or a supercomputer that controls everything does not work. The only way for really high intelligence is where it's very local. You have to have awareness at each place, at each point. So our bodies are like that. Each cell is aware and does its work in its location. And that's why your body works everywhere all the time. And even if there's brain injuries, our bodies still work. Usually brain injuries affect more our relationship to the outside world and our mechanical operation in that world. But when you look at it, I don't operate my body. I don't tell my cells, my heart, my blood. I don't do any of that. That all happens. And it happens from self-awareness within my body. And that happens in the bigger body too. Each individual is a conscious being with its own self-awareness. So we go back to understanding how one body of consciousness can fractal itself down through material, architecture, vehicles, vessels, and have completely different experiences in different locations, which is something very functional. Part of why it's happening is for that functionality. Because if you think about it, it makes more sense to break down and evaluate each place individually than to try to have one experience of everything at once. You will be so overwhelmed, you will not be able to actually process all that data. When we leave this body, we basically detach from this individual experience and we move away from just being my memories, my personality, because all I know is what I remember and what I experience. And you flow back to the ocean that is fully connected to all the memories. You are going back to being all knowing, everything all at once. So that ocean is connected through plants, animal, people, the DNA, to the greater memory of everything. And that's why we feel like when we go back that suddenly we remember who we are. We understand everything and everyone. We see all experiences as our own. And that's where the sense of love and compassion come from, because you suddenly truly understand the person next to you, why they are the way they are, how certain events shaped life, things that you were not aware of, other points of views of yourself from other people that you were not aware of. So it's really interesting to understand that now you only seen one point of view, but that's a temporary state. When you leave this body, you go back to that bigger body of consciousness that is fully connected and experiences everything all at once through those infinite amount of sensors. A good way to see what I'm talking about is when we look at newborns and kids. You see the pure consciousness that is just in the present moment, experiencing life, living it, and full of joy and happiness, and has no sense of trauma, past, future, really just having a great, playful time. And then as life moves on and our environment and experiences that are happening to us start shaping us, and we start forming more and more of a character and personality that reflects those experiences. And there is, as you call nature and nurture, there is the body that you're born into, the vessel, which determines a lot of what you can and cannot do in life. You know, whether you'll be an athlete or a lawyer. There's a lot of things that do come from the vessel you're born into. There's the consciousness that pours into that vessel, and that brings with it certain knowledge, memories of its own. But then the thing that really, really affects us, and it's like the software that's going to be written in this hardware, is the environment we're born into. And I think one of the most important videos I made is about the family fluid dynamics, which explains how you're born into this existing river. Generations and generations of experiences that are passing from one generation to the next automatically. So you're born into that family, into a certain environment, and that affects your personality and character. And the good news about it is that it is not you. It's not something that belongs to you. There's many things we inherit, good or bad. So once we start reflecting on that and seeing what is me, the true self of my being, my consciousness, and what things were put onto me, onto my character and personality, we're able to separate from those things and reclaim ourselves and reclaim our present moment, which is the most important thing you can have, is the space to be still, to be in the present moment without distraction, because that's what life will do to us. The events that are happening, and especially if they're tough or traumatic, they will do everything it can to distract you. And you'll be stuck in the past or worry about the future. Anything to keep you from being in the present moment, being able to see what's actually happening in front of you and doing the right thing in that moment. And another aspect of that is so important and many of us ignore or just not understand is the spiral nature of your own being And imagine that spiral being when you're born, it's the beginning of it. And as you grow, it opens up and gets bigger and bigger. The closer you are to the center of that spiral, the more the events that are happening to you will affect you. And the older you get, the less events are going to affect you. Which to many people makes sense. The older we get, the less sensitive we are to things and events, and we went through a lot and we understand life better. But I want to shine a light on the really young years, and even when we are still in the womb. From the moment of conception, our experience begins. And we are conscious and aware, and we take in everything that happens around us. So even when you're in the womb, the feelings, the diet, the events, the music, the experiences, the love, the fear, everything that's happening around you is already affecting who you're going to be. It's affecting your physical health, your mental health. That's where it starts. So we shouldn't ignore babies, newborns, even the fetus in the womb, thinking that, well, they're not aware yet. They can't hear, they can't understand, they can't feel. This will not affect them in the future. Everything that happens affects us in the future. And the younger we are, the more it will affect us, and the more it will carve itself into our personality, identity, and the way we're going to be. And a lot of times we blame the kids themselves, thinking that they were born this way. That's something that they brought with them, when in reality, it's something that we put on them. The environment has already put into them the issues and the stresses and anxiety and the fears and resentment that existed around them. Or on the other hand, the love, acceptance, compassion, so good or bad, it seeps in and it affects our bodies. That is the reason I think it's important we understand that our entire body is conscious and aware. And even when it's just a few cells in the womb, that consciousness is there, that awareness is there, and it's already affecting it, and it's already accumulating memories as it's growing, developing, and becoming a full-grown human being with its own personality and character. I hope today's video can help you connect to your true self, the ever-present consciousness that you are, aside of the memories and experiences that you've had in this physical world, aside from anything that was subscribed onto your character from generations and generations before you that don't belong to you. So you'll be able to see who you are and who you are not. And by that, releasing yourself from past worries and experiences, releasing yourself from the worry about the future. And when we understand and connect to who we are, we're able to be still, we're able to disconnect from all of the anxiety and stress that is really occupying our mind and taking our mind away from the present moment. And by that, stealing away our life, causing us to make mistakes. And it's a spiral that's going down. So there's different videos I made about how to let go of your negative thoughts, the family fluid dynamics, the cloud meditation. All of those tools are just to help detach from the thoughts that occupy our mind and then connect to who you are. And only you can do it, and only you will know who you are. Nobody else can really help you. There's no way to create any dependency or connection to another human being that will help you do that. It's something that only you can do. And that's why I'm making these videos, is just to share my experience of how I did it for myself. But there is absolutely no connection or dependency that is created here between us. If you want to do that work for yourself And maybe not in this way, but in other ways that you'll find. But it's up to you to do the work and to disconnect from the things that cloud your mind and get to a place where you can be still, calm, and be able to process things as they are, rather than as generations and generations before you did, because of different traumas and memories that have accumulated and then downloaded onto you. I hope today's video could help clear out the contradiction between the individual self, the illusion of the separation and the individuality that we have, which contradicts with the idea that we are all one body, one big body of consciousness. Please leave any questions or comments below this video and let me know if there's other subjects you want me to talk about. Thank you very much for watching today. We'll see you soon.